A couple of months ago, while having lunch with my dad, I reminded him that my great-grandmother Anna had come to America alone at the age of 12, an unaccompanied minor. Of course, no one called her that then. She was just an immigrant among thousands, who happened to cross the Atlantic without her parents. My dad looked thoughtful at the idea of me calling Anna an unaccompanied minor. "Your other great-grandmother was too," he said. He went on to tell me about his grandmother, Clara, who traveled from Germany to New York at 16 without her parents, a story which showed a girl of immense courage. When I sat down to write the stories of both my great-grandmothers, I realized I needed a lot more of Clara's story for my father. I wrote him and asked a series of questions. What he wrote back was so beautifully told and so much more direct than my retelling would have been, that I asked him to share his memories alongside mine. You'll find below the stories of our matriarchal lineages told side by side. Anna's father had come to America from a small village in Austria before the rest of his family. He needed to earn money to pay for the passage of his wife and children. He left behind his wife, his eldest daughter, little Anchen, and 3 young sons, all under the age of 7. For 5 years he worked the docks of Lower Manhattan and in garment factories. Time blurred. He lost track of how old his daughter had become. He saw children working on the slips of the Lower East Side, unloading smaller boats that brought imports from the Caribbean and beyond. He heard that girls of 13 were already sewing in factories across Manhattan. Even at 7, when he had last seen her, Anchen could sew by hand and even on a machine, so he sent a telegram home. He wired money for Anna's passage. There wasn't enough for all 5 of them, but if Anna could work in a factory beside him, they could raise the rest of the money twice as fast. I have no way of knowing what her mother thought when she received that telegram. Perhaps she wept. Perhaps she argued. But in the end, she sent her only daughter across the ocean alone. I often imagine how Anna made this journey. Was she dressed in layers of clothing? Did she carry a satchel of bread, meat, and cheese? Did she have a coin or 2 hidden in her pocket? I like to think she stayed invisible on that crowded ship, keeping her head down, avoiding the dangers that a girl of 12 might face among hundreds of strangers. Or perhaps it wasn't as grim. Maybe she traveled with a family she knew, or alongside fellow Austrians who spoke her language. But the only thing my grandmother ever told me was this. Her mother came alone, and she was only 12. When Anna's father met her at Ellis Island, he took one look at her and wept. Years later, Anna told her daughter that her father cried out, "You're so small. I thought you could work in the factories. But instead, I've brought another mouth to feed." Perhaps she reassured him. "Papa, I might be small, but I can work." Or perhaps she cried too. He did find her factory work. Surrounded by other children and teenagers from all over Europe, Anna sewed long hours in a garment shop. With the money she and her father earned, they finally brought the rest of the family from Austria. The years were 1890 to 1895. Anna had escaped the pogroms in Austria by making that journey. She married a young man named Martin Jacobs, also from Austria. Together they had 13 children, 12 of whom survived. She worked well into her adult years at the Triangle Shirtwaist factory. But she wasn't there on the tragic day in 1911 when it burned, killing hundreds of immigrant women. She had just given birth to her 10th child, my grandmother Lena. In a way, Lena's birth saved her life. I heard countless stories from Lena and her sister Nora, who lived together on the Lower East Side for over 60 years. Every Thursday night I ate dinner at their home, and they told me stories about their mother. How Anna could make anything with her hands. Sewing, knitting, crochet, leatherwork, even millinery. She tended animals, grew herbs, and somehow gave her children love in a life that gave her very little. One story they loved to repeat was both terrible and awe-inspiring. When Anna was 6 months pregnant with their older sister, Nettie, her husband came home drunk and beat her. The baby was born prematurely, so tiny that survival seemed impossible. Anna swaddled her against her own body, skin to skin, feeding her hourly with droplets of milk. For 2 months she kept that fragile infant pressed to her chest. My grandmother claimed that their father didn't even know the child had been born. Nettie survived, though she was mentally disabled. To them, this was proof of their mother's strength, her ingenuity, her unshakable love. When my grandmother Lena reached 90, I was 30. We had become best friends. We held hands often, shared stories, and I helped her with small things, sorting her mail, explaining bills. I was always puzzled by the names. Letters arrived for Lena Shore, Cecilia Shore, Lillian Shore. So many variations. Grandma, how can you be receiving official mail in 3 different names? She laughed and showed me her ID, her Medicare card, her Social Security card. All different. She was a child born at home to immigrant parents who spoke no English. She had only gone to school until 5th grade. Bureaucracies didn't care who she was. They let Ellis Island clerks decide names at random. She embraced the anonymity. She told me proudly she always had health insurance, something her sister Nora never managed. Once, when Nora needed glaucoma surgery, Lena took 2 weeks off work and pretended to be the patient, so that Nora could undergo the procedure under her insurance. Names and papers, she told me, are just that, papers. Who you are is the story you carry. I once saw a photo of Lena and Nora in 1940, my grandmother holding my mother Miriam. Anna had been furious that Lena married before Nora, claiming it was a disgrace to the elder sister. But Lena confided to me. Nora never married. If I'd waited, I'd have never had children. And besides, I gave her a home. I no longer have pictures of Anna. They've been lost with time. But I remember her as my grandmother described her. A tiny woman, fair-haired, blue-eyed, often looking burdened in photographs. In contrast, my grandmother Lena was always smiling.